Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Monday night edition of the Real Chat Daddy Show. I am your host, our Chat Daddy Sims. Glad to be back with you guys on a hot and steamy Monday evening here in the Chicagoland area. It is truly hotter than July, and ironically, that is the name of my month-long series, Hotter Than July. Each and every night during the month of July, I plan on bringing you some of the most amazing people ever with real-life conversations that will affect you and your family. Hopefully, you guys all had a wonderful 4th of July weekend. I don't know about you guys, but the fireworks wore me out. We'll talk to our co-hosts about that tonight. It's sad that people actually ended up losing their homes, garage. Aha, there's one. Aha, and there's two. Yay! There they are. How are you, ladies?
Great. How are you all?
I'm good. I'm just hot. I'm so hot, baby. I don't even know what to do. I'm hotter. I'm hotter than July today. I am. How you doing, Dr. Carol?
I'm looking at my name, Brother Chad. I guess it's the French version, right?
You wrote it, not me. But look, I wrote the right name. Look what I put here. Look, see?
Right. I just speak a little French, Chad, so we'll call it the French version.
That's all right, baby. As long as you're here, I'm glad to have both of you here. This is our new way of communicating now. Before we were on the radio, and I loved you ladies in person, but this is the new way since the pandemic, and I'm just so excited. Why don't both of you ladies introduce yourself to the audience, let them know who you are, and then let's get into the hot topics of the day. Miss Ross, I'm going to start with you first, and then we'll go to the doctor. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Chat Daddy. It is so great to see you, to see Carol. I'm glad that we're here. I'm glad we stay connected. I am up here on the North Shore. It is just as hot up here as it is down in Chicago. But I'm grateful to be here, grateful to continue our conversations, continue our chats now live on YouTube and Facebook. And yeah, I look forward to talking about the history of things within our community, the hot topics, and just talking about some of the things that, I have researched over the years, both as an educator, an international or global educator within our community, speaking in various different mediums. And I look forward to sharing now here with you all.
Very good. All right. Well, we love you. You look great. You do. And Dr. Carol, you're looking at, look, ladies, your artwork in the background is amazing. I just have myself as my artwork where you. Good. Right. Dr. Carol, go right ahead and introduce yourself to everybody.
Well, I'm just glad to be here. We've had the opportunity to work together before. I'm Dr. Carol Renee Collins Ayalaja. I partner with Miss Elisa Ross, and we're worldwide. And we're worldwide when we mean wise, not just WISC, but eyes, EYES. And so our goal is to be engaged in discussing topics related to African peoples and the Black diaspora, and multicultural individuals as we navigate this world. So no topic is off limit. We just want to promote inclusion and collectivity as we continue to maneuver this 21st century. So, Chad, you're a great, great, great inspiration to us, and we're so pleased to be part of your brand new platform. You just keep rising to the top every day. Glad to be here.
I do. I love you ladies so much. And I love telling the backstory of how I met these ladies. Last year, Jill Scott was out at, no, it was Mary J. Blige. Mary J. Blige was out at Ravinia. And these two ladies come sauntering in. And I mean, they was fabulous. They didn't walk in. They sauntered in and set their things down. And, you know, and the concert was just about over. It really was. By the time we took the train out there, set up, I got comfortable and went to eat. Mary J. Blige was just about done. So I turned and I said, oh, this is cute. I said, these ladies must work here at Ravinia. They must be some executives or somebody here because they just shade on out here and it's almost over. We started talking and built a lifelong friendship. And these are probably two of the most wisest ladies I know. Just their information, their knowledge, their love of our race and our people is just incredible. And I am truly grateful that my nosy ass said what I said to them that night at that concert, because I now consider these both to be my sister and friend. And I love you ladies. I do. And glad to have you on the new platform.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Glad to be
so,
here.
Ladies, how have you been faring since this whole shutter in place? I mean, here we are in the midst of a global pandemic. We never in a million years would have thought that. You both are in education. You both, you know, travel a lot for your jobs and things like that. Did you think that the world would shut down like this? And Dr. Carol, I'm going to start with you first.
No, I didn't. It's one thing living as a American and African American and being able to think in terms of America's positioning here in this world. Under no circumstances did I believe that America would be immobilized like this. And it has been, in many ways, traumatic. It's been a time of deep spiritual investigation. Also just trying to find out what makes this illogical to me and why we're in this particular condition. So yes, Chad, Alicia, this is a shocker to me to be living through a pandemic and living through a pandemic that in some ways is immobilizing, but necessarily so for our safety.
Right. Yeah, it's been different. You know, I tell people this is a time now where you have to learn to pivot. This is a time now where you've got to use whatever resources you have available. Who knew that we would be hoarding toilet paper? Who knew that something like rubbing alcohol would be a commodity? Who knew that they would say you and your family could only have one pack of chicken? And we've never seen anything like this ever. Alicia, how have you been getting along with this?
I feel the same way. I mean, it was a shock. I remember speaking to coworkers just before leaving and saying, okay, I'll see you all in about 2 weeks, you know, thinking this was going to blow over. We just sat and met together in a park, an open space, a couple weeks ago. And we said, wow, we had no idea that this would be, we would be here now and we would be shut down for so long. But the thing that, you know, I appreciate is, you know, for the most part, you know, my loved ones, we're all making sure that we are paying attention to the rules, you know, staying shut in, doing all the healthy steps that we need to take. But it is a spiritual reset. You know, I remember listening to the pastors at the beginning of the year, right? 2020 vision. That's what everyone was talking about. 2020 vision. And they were also saying it's going to be a reset. And while it is a reset in ways that we could not have imagined on all levels of our personal lives, social lives, and obviously globally, it is a reset. Mhm.
I couldn't agree with you more. You're absolutely right about that. For those of you all that are just joining us, welcome to the Monday night edition of the Real Chat Daddy Show. I am your host, Chat Daddy. And tonight is the kickoff. Well, actually, last Thursday night was the kickoff to my Hotter Than July series. I want to thank our two amazing guests that we had on Thursday evening. We had Black Hollywood royalty with us. We had legendary actress Mary Ann Alder. As you guys all remember, she played Dee Dee Bannister on The Edge of Night, as well as on The Royals. Quite a few movies to her credit. Still a wonderful comedian and actress. And we also had actress Ella Joyce, who joined us. You guys remember her from Rock. She's currently on a drama series that's on Flex TV right now. And so she's doing just wonderful things. And she has Funkercise, which is her dance program. And she did it Friday night and had a huge audience online. So I just want to thank those two amazing ladies for helping me to get the Hotter Than July series kicked off. What I need for you to do as our viewing audience this evening, please go over to the Facebook page, The Real Chat Daddy Show. Start a watch party there. Share the page so other people can get in on this important conversation. Or you can go over to YouTube, The Real Chat Daddy Show on YouTube. Start a party there. Draw more people in. Tonight, my two amazing co-hosts, they have a lot to say. We're going to talk about Black economics and how we can really rebuild, restructure, and how the world views us and our spending dollars. So I'm glad to have both of these ladies here with me this evening. I'm going to start off by giving you COVID update numbers. Illinois officials announced today reported 869 new cases of COVID-19. Oh, I got the wrong numbers. Wait a minute. Let me get the right numbers here. Hold on a second. I thought I had pulled the right numbers. Continue. Well, let me just say this. We now have in place. Here we go. New numbers. Okay. We have a reported 614 new cases of coronavirus in the last 24 hours, and we've had 6 additional deaths. So that means our death totals are dropping here in the state of Illinois. We're very happy about that. Our thoughts and prayers go out to anyone who has lost a family member due to the coronavirus pandemic, but our numbers are definitely dropping, and we only had 614 new cases. Now, effective as of today, Mayor Lori Lightfoot has put an order in place that anyone who is coming into Chicago from any of the 15 states across the country that are deemed as high risk, you must quarantine yourself for 14 days once you arrive back in Chicago, whether you've traveled in and out or you went to visit somebody this weekend and you're coming back, whatever the case may be, she wants you guys to quarantine for 14 days. Ladies, do you think this quarantine is going to happen? How would we monitor people quarantining? And do you think people will be honest about their travels? I saw a lot of people on social media at barbecues, at state parks, on boats. So do you think that people will adhere to the rule in quarantine?
I think we can hope that they do. As far as traveling back home from other states, one of the 15 states, we can only hope that happens. And then, defining what quarantine means. It's summertime. It doesn't mean that, you don't go outside if you have a yard to stand outside in, or, in the front or the back, or even just right in front of your place. But we just have to be diligent. We have to be careful. We have to be diligent. This is one of the pandemics that we're dealing with right now. And it is serious. And that's my opinion.
Dr. Carol, do you think people will follow the rules? They have a hard time, Dr. Carol.
I think there is a wave of kind of individuality that is really encompassing our society. Some of it may be promoted by political thoughts. This notion of kind of do whatever you feel and that the pandemic is not a problem. So I do think that we have to be cautious because some folks are operating under that assumption that it's not a problem. I know that we can't have monitoring of the process, but I think the more that our mayor and those who are in charge of protecting us continue to emphasize, I don't think they can ever rest in emphasizing the importance of it and continuing to put out data that drives home the seriousness of the situation. I do not believe that people will automatically self-isolate. No, I do not believe that people automatically will wear masks because they have enforced that you cannot enter public spaces without a mask is why many people wear the mask, not on their own volition of saying, I'm going to wear the mask. So we have those attitudes out there, Chad, that are of concern. Yeah, so the more and more that our leaders continually re-emphasize, and if they need to have more checks and balances, and saying you must have a mask on, even if it's increased law enforcement. And I know there's a tone right now where folks are questioning law enforcement, but even the individual security teams at various places, the park rangers, I mean, there needs to be just a full force that continues to reiterate why we must protect ourselves and others.
Yes. You know, I've learned, like today, I had to run out for a few moments. For the most part, I've been in the house. It's hot. I have a lot of work to do in the house. And I ran out today, not even thinking, got in the car, was headed where I was going and was like, oh my God, I forgot my mask. But I've even learned to fold a mask up and put it in my keychain. I have a little pouch on my keychain. So I take a paper mask, fold it up, put it in that keychain. And that way, when I go somewhere and realize, oh, I forgot my mask, I at least have that one because I usually try to have a mask on to match my outfit. That's just how bougie I am. So, I mean, you know, but I just think it's important that we all protect ourselves, that we, you know, follow the guidelines, do what's right, and just kind of figure out, you know, how to do this, you know? So I don't know why people want to make this so complicated. Have you been places where people have not had on masks, ladies?
Yes.
Yes, I have. I've been several different places. I remember I was in a grocery store several weeks ago and someone did not have on a mask. And I remember telling the person, you know, one of the employees, and I said, you know, I asked her, I said, aren't you all emphasizing wearing masks in your store? And she said, yes. And I said, you know, I feel uncomfortable because I see several people in here who do not have on masks. And I feel as if if I had not had on my mask, I would have been approached. So I let it be known my concerns, and she actually said she will speak to the person that she saw immediately in front of us, actually, that did not have on a mask. So therefore, yes, I've been to places inside, outside. One of the things that I try to do when I'm, you know, outside getting some exercise, I bring my mask, you know, just in case I am going to pass someone, you know, on my walkway. I'm still going to bring my mask, although they say, oh, you know, 6 feet, you should be fine. I'm going to make sure I have my mask outdoors. When I'm in the car, I make sure I have a kit, mask, and, you know, cleanser and sanitizer, you know, being very careful, of course, about the sanitizing where you locate it, because of the, you know, accidents that we've heard of. But I think it's important that we do what we have to do for ourselves, our immediate loved ones, and then those around us. We definitely have to do our due diligence.
Very good. Very good. I agree. Dr. Carol, what do you feel about that?
Well, it has often, I shall not say often, but I have seen folks attempt to enter public spaces without a mask.
Yeah.
And I think we all have to kind of step up in our society with some nudges. It doesn't have to be belligerent. It doesn't have to be an argument. But I think if we create that wave of expectation, like Alicia said, you know, I feel uncomfortable. How can we resolve this situation? Or as I have done, I've walked up and said, young man, do you have a mask? And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have it on." And I said, "Thank you so much." I think if we kind of even move into strategies of how best to ask the question so it doesn't become confrontational, chat, that might be very effective. So you get that social nudging and people begin to feel uncomfortable if they don't meet the standard, which might be necessary because the purpose of that mask is to protect others along with oneself. So it has to be sustained.
Right.
Yes. Now, ladies, both of you have made a career in academics. Both of you have taught on various levels. I'm sure school will eventually go back in, and you'll have to be at that lectern talking to your students and speaking to them. How do you feel about being in a classroom with, let's say, 20 people, 20 to 25 people? And maybe one of the students will not have on a mask or does not believe in having on that mask.
I think, it's interesting. There are a lot of conversations, of course, from educators on all levels, starting with kindergarten through the collegiate level. And a lot of the concerns are valid. And the concerns are, should we actually go back this fall? Should we go back this fall into a classroom setting where where you really cannot social distance yourself? You really cannot, protect yourself by, wearing a mask all day, because there are some people that have health concerns, both the teachers, administrators, as well as students who may have health concerns where they would have to relieve themselves. And maybe the solution would be they'd have to go to the bathroom to take off their mask just to breathe for a little bit. But then that's the other thing. What if, there is an argument about the kinds of masks that we wear all day. Are they medically safe for us to wear all day? What are the ones that are efficient for us to use during the day, during an 8-hour day, 6-hour day? So there are a lot of concerns, a lot of questions that have not been clearly answered. And so therefore, personally, and from the educators that I have spoken with, we prefer going back at least this fall, doing e-learning, if not a hybrid situation. And what I would say to that is preferring that information will come out sooner than later, because there are some schools, when you think about the primary and secondary schools in particular, they will be starting back next month, particularly in the southern regions, but also here in Illinois. And then as well as some of the universities, most of them, some of them go back in September, but there has to be a plan that is communicated clearly from the district about what it is that what is preferable, but most importantly, what is safe for everyone. Because the matter is that, we know the parents, like in secondary and primary schools, they want their kids to go back to school. But we're, those educators who are in those schools, they have families also, so their concern is, well, what about me, my health, and my families? So there's a lot of conversation, of course, around this on what is proper, what is safe, and what should we do right now. In my opinion, is wait.
Okay, Dr. Carroll, what would you like to add to that?
Well, both the Illinois State Board of Education and organizations in higher learning have put out information to try to support some of the necessary administrative moves during this period as it relates to COVID, as it relates to transitioning back into the schools. So as you know, I'm at the university level and I train administrators for service throughout the state. So it's going to be different modes for different leaders in different communities, Chad, because you're talking about throughout the state, some of our smaller rural areas, and also we have mid-size urbans, and then we have a mega urban like Chicago, which is the only mega urban in the state of Illinois. So leaders, principals, and superintendents are going to have to proceed with caution based on various aspects, one being how well they're able to adhere to the guidelines, such as social distancing and mask wearing and issues of sanitary support as it relates to cleanliness and hygiene and all the other pieces that are necessary. They'll have to be attuned to their community and what their communities are thinking about this transition. They'll have to be attuned to their staff, their teachers, and their paraprofessionals. They'll have to be attuned as superintendents to the Board of Education and what they're saying about it. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. I do know that the goal of the institutions throughout the state, the educational institutions, to ensure that students are well served, but they're having to proceed with caution because of the safety implications. So I think you're going to see various rollout models as far as the higher education organizations or institutions. You know, you've got private liberal arts colleges, and then you've got institutions with 30 and 40,000 students, and the other one somewhere in between. So when you're talking about these institutions, you're talking about where do we put our students? Do we have additional auditorium space in order to socially distance our students? What do we do in the eating halls? So various universities and colleges have come out with their guidelines, and I want to commend those colleges and universities where I've read their guidelines, because there's some tremendous thinking going on, definitely with first and foremost concern for the health, well-being, and educational success of all students involved. But it is not a one-size-fits-all in this situation.
I believe that. I really do. I've been just looking at so many different news stories about how the travel industry has changed quite a bit. There was a story today that they did on Mackinac Island in Michigan, and how this, even the Grand Hotel there in Mackinac, you know, their dining room seats almost 900 people, and they've had to reduce that down to 400 people now. And that a majority of that city is based off of tourism. And, you know, it's going to be really different. And then, you know, a lot of these young people who are paid a full price to go to college for that college experience may or may not be able to get that experience anymore.
Very much so. And some students are being asked, if they're in a certain distance from campus, they may in fact be asked to commute. As I think of one of the smaller private liberal arts colleges in the state, students might have to go into a hotel situation. Certain students, some will be asked to commute, others will be on campus. I must commend this institution for having such a well thought plan. However, there are going to be different conditions for different students. And that's not easy for an institution to try to provide high quality education across so many variances. So we have to continually to be supportive of our institutions of higher learning and also our K-12 institutions.
Very good. Ladies, we actually have a question from a viewer. Tracy Woods wants to know, how much does internet accessibility play a part in reopening education in the fall? And that is a great question, Tracy. And I'm going to tell you why. Even where, you know, I was telling you ladies on the phone where I moved to, internet is not the best. And never in a million years did anybody think that people would be working from home. And then here's the other piece. Nobody in a million years where I live thought somebody would actually be doing a television broadcast, you know, via the internet. So, you know, for all of these homes where people don't have internet access or not the best internet access, I'm sure that'll play a huge part in it as well, too. Alicia, you want to comment on that?
Yes. You know, it's interesting because this is part of one of my careers, right? Is technology and e-learning and education technology overall. You know, being at in the beginning, somewhat in the forefront of digital divide communities, both locally as well as internationally. I am reminded when I hear the numbers of the students in the households that did not have connectivity during these past couple of months, in particular in the city. I was extremely dismayed because, you know, the mayor and others were mentioning that there was not connectivity, very similar to what you initially experienced, Chat, in your community, where you are. There was not connectivity within the African American communities in particular, as well as within the Latinx community also. And that is a problem because it's 2020. You know, there are some major cities around the country that have free internet access. There are places downtown Chicago where there is free Wi-Fi, you know, with one of the major companies. So obviously that had not extended to other areas of Chicago because, you know, these communities are still in Chicago, but they're labeled communities like the Bronzeville community, you know, some of the West Side communities that have not been served. And it's a problem. And that is why, again, if we are going to do, even if it's a hybrid model in the fall, the educators, the Chicago public school system, they need to know about what is going to happen so they can properly prepare. I'm sure they have been taking measures since over the past couple of months, but the feedback has been, as we've heard on the news, that it was not enough. A lot of students were lost in the system. They were not able to get to do the classes that they needed to do or be active in classes because they did not have internet access. And then you think about the libraries. The library should have had some type of a system with having access to computers, number one, and then therefore having access to the internet. I know some of the libraries, of course, in the beginning months were closed, but as they began to open up, or community centers that we have, consistently throughout our communities, again, both in the quote unquote Black and brown communities, we have community centers, but there is still a digital divide. And that disheartens me from someone who has been in this profession for a very long time, both again, locally, as well as internationally, to know that we still have a digital divide, and this has to be fixed now, not just because of COVID-19, because we're in the 21st century. We just entered a new decade. We're in 2020. And we have to have access, and we have to have access now. And there are companies that can do this, both some of the mega companies, as well as some of the smaller companies can partner together and make access here in this city, as well as other cities and communities that need it, including rural communities.
Yes, I agree with you 100% on that. I do. Ladies, let me see. I have some other things. I don't know if you ladies heard or not, but the mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, she has tested positive for COVID-19. That news just broke recently. And here's the deal. She was asymptomatic. She no signs, no symptoms. I did hear that her husband had not been feeling well and he had been sleeping for a couple of days, but who knew, that she would test positive for COVID-19. And rumor has it that Joe Biden is thinking about having her as his running mate.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought.
Yes, I'm sorry to hear that because she has been so active in her community and obviously so vocal, which is why she is being considered with some of with the recent events that have been happening, but also, her record prior to some of the public things that have been happening. She is a viable person within our community. So sorry to hear about.
Yes, absolutely. Dr. Carol, anything you want to add before we move on and shift gears?
I just wanted to go back to brother who asked a question about the technology. There's definitely issues of access and equity, brother, that are of concern, because although many of the institutions have moved to an e-learning platform, you do have the idea of understanding whether or not a home has internet accessibility. That's one key. Whether or not a home has appropriate devices, that's another piece. Also, issues of supervision for the protection of teachers. As a teacher's on the platform with children, it is a best practice to have an adult somewhere around so that there's some monitoring of the interaction. That protects the teacher, protects the child. It keeps the parent engaged in the learning process. So you've got that particular situation for children who may not have an adult at home to be aware of the learning and support the learning. So all of those create issues. There are some districts that are able to hand out devices to children. There are other districts that do not have the capital to purchase and hand out devices. So even in our best attempt at ensuring that children can learn during this period, there may be some gaps. And don't forget the fact that different parents are able to or not able to support the learning process, even through their own exposures. So you have families that do know how to access Khan Academy, parents that have had a level of education where they can support the learning process. What then is the situation for the child whose parents maybe have minimal education and do not have a background that can necessarily speak to the content? So know that the best place for children ultimately is in the presence of a highly qualified teacher who can support them. And even the technology platform that is occurring across our school districts. But there are some other particulars that need to be present, such as they must have access to a well-conditioned device, they must have access to the internet, and they must have a family member, an adult family member, who's there to support the learning. So those are all things we have to really consider when we think of equity and access during the e-learning platform.
Yeah.
Well, now let me break that down in plain, simple English. I love how these ladies talk because it's so stimulating to me. So what Dr. Carroll said was you got the one house where everybody on point, they know what they're doing, they know what they're talking about. Then you got the other house where everybody in the house is ignorant, just ignorant. Now that ain't how she said it, but that's how I'm gonna translate it. So that's how that works. That's how that works. Tracy had another question for us that I thought was really good. Tracy says Cornell is reopening, but Harvard is going mainly online and limiting the number of students on campus. What is driving those differences in your opinions, ladies?
Well, as we said before, when we were speaking about the different ways in which institutions are addressing the particular pandemic and being able to provide the safest options. And I want to go back to the idea of social distancing is critically important. And we know that that's a best practice. There could be questions as to how social distancing can play out on the Cornell campus in comparison to the Harvard campus. So although I don't have detailed information about those two institutions, I think it would be important to look at the ratio between graduate level students and undergrad, because that's another piece. Often undergrads are housed on campus, whereas graduate students commute. So that may be a point of interest in those two particular high-level institutions. Where are most of the undergrads? And is there a ratio where they have a very, very high amount of undergrads, which means that the university is responsible for housing often those students versus commuting, perhaps, and graduate students may very well live in their own quarters and come in for classes on a more staggered basis. So those are things that come to mind for me as I think about the different rollouts.
Very good. Yes, Ms. Ross.
Yes, and I think, and I agree with what Carol said. And to emphasize, I think it's also dependent, therefore, on where the institutions are located. As she referenced, Harvard being in the city, maybe Cornell, they have more of a campus environment for the students to come home to or go to school to. The dormitories. The location, whether it's in the city, outside the city, and not just thinking of Cornell and Harvard, as we think about some of the other institutions who are doing things differently from one another. There are some institutions who are, like, for example, Syracuse. The students are going back to campus, but they have a larger campus, in the dormitory. So therefore, they're able to social distance. I know that also some of these, where you would have in some of these dormitories, you'd have 4 people, you now have 2 people, so that you can control the social bubble, if you will, that also medical experts are talking about, controlling your bubble, knowing who's in your bubble. But again, I think having a hybrid situation, in particular with universities, is probably the best thing to do right now during COVID, in particular for the fall. I also know of some institutions that are going back, for example, in August, and then once the Thanksgiving holiday comes, that is the end of their semester. So they're also limiting the amount of time that the students are on campus. You know, as Carol referenced, there isn't one solution for all of the universities, but you do have to be very diligent. You know, I hope that the leaders are very much aware, the administration, what it is that they can do for these students, because then on the other end, you have the students in the university in Alabama who are actually having parties to see.
And wait a minute, and got nerve enough to be having a party to see who can catch COVID.
That's the point, exactly. And
some of it also, go ahead, Alicia.
You know, and so therefore, it is the education and socialization of the students. There has to be a communication from the home as well as from the institution on how serious this is. Because again, we hear in the news that, you know, some of the younger people are obviously thinking that they cannot get this virus. And so therefore they're taking chances. So therefore it has to be a clear communication from home as well as from the institutions. And there has to be mandated, premises set in place for these students when they come on campus, and they need to know before they get on campus, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. Dr. Carol, did you want to make a end comment on that before we move on?
Yes, I think that we also have to take into account the culture of the community, not just necessarily the proximity or the number of people per square mile, but the culture of the families that attend the institution, some of the belief systems, some of the K-12 institutions, several of the leaders that I work with are actually polling their parents, asking the community their input. So although I don't know if that has been the process at a Cornell or at a Harvard, I do think it's critically important that institutions have a pulse on the thoughts, the belief systems of the actual greater community, whether it be the store owners, whether it be the families of the young people that currently attend the institution. That's critically important. And that may be the reason why perhaps in Alabama or down south, there may be a different approach based on the ideologies toward this particular virus and whether or not it is imminent danger. It could be based on that region and the way some folks think perhaps about it versus another region or another particular community. So we just have to be consistently attuned to the community belief system.
Yes. All right. Well, ladies, you've done an outstanding job with hot topics and the news stories of the day. We didn't even get through all of them, but we got through enough that everybody is understanding what we're talking about. Outstanding job to you both. For those of you all that are just joining us, welcome to the Monday night edition of the Real Chat Daddy Show. I am your host, Chat Daddy. Glad to be here with you guys on a hot and humid Monday evening. It is definitely summer 2020. I want to remind you guys that we are still in the midst of a global pandemic, coronavirus, COVID-19. I want to remind you all that whenever you're out in public, please try to wear your mask. Always make sure you sanitize, wash your hands, sanitize surfaces. Social distancing is important. Just stay safe, stay healthy. I know it's important that you guys want to get out and enjoy yourselves. I was out and about this weekend, but you better believe I was having people stand back, get up off of me, don't get on me, do all of that. I had 2 people hug me, and I was like, oh, let me just, bathe in Lysol real quick. But we are really doing an outstanding job of staying healthy and safe. And the numbers here in Chicago and the state of Illinois are diminishing quite a bit. Our co-hosts tonight, 2 ladies that are both what I consider beasts in the academic field. And they're here tonight We've agreed to do a Monday night series during the month of July. It is Hotter Than July, my new series that's going to be this entire month. And so on Monday night, we're going to do Worldwide, where we talk about things that are so important that we need to know as a people. And Dr. Carol and Alicia is here with me this evening, and they both are just wonderful women. And so, ladies, let's talk about our first topic tonight, and we have a series of them coming for the next couple of Mondays. So I'm super excited about it. Who wants to do the introductory of tonight's discussion? Who wants to take that on first?
Alicia, why don't you take that on?
Okay. One of the things I have to say, Carol and I have known one another for quite a long time. And I actually met her in my, my combined career of covering the digital divide. So we met each other professionally, but personally, we have become friends, sisters for a couple of decades now, actually. And the topic, therefore, that we're talking about tonight is something that we talk about casually, leisurely, but also professionally. And we want to dive into economics and what does that mean in our community? Economics, the American dream, and some of the history, the facts of who we are as African Americans here in this country, some of the things and ways in which we started being involved in the economics in this country. In particular, we're going to start with slavery and the stock market and who actually were, who was stock, and we were, our ancestors were. And we want to talk, of course, about Tulsa, but not just Tulsa as the Black Wall Street, but some of the other Black communities, including right here in Chicago. On the South Side, the migrants, like our statue that we have on Martin Luther King Drive, down, on 30th Street, the Black migrant. So these are some of the things that we want to talk about because we want to remind ourselves and others who we are within our community, who we have been, and what we need to do, continue to do, and what we need to start doing. It's not about, just supporting, our businesses, but supporting those who are sensitive to who we are, and aware of who we are. And so this is, this is what we want to talk about tonight.
Okay, very good. I want to start off with, what is economics, ladies? If you had to explain economics to my audience and to people, who would best be able to explain what is economics?
When I think of economics, Chad, I think about what I would call, in my own words, the cycle of the dollar, or whatever the currency is, and how that plays out. All right, whether it is through regeneration of income, or whether it's through income transitioning out of one's hand. All right. So the ability to create wealth, and then how wealth plays out in the cycle of exchanges. And that's the way I see economics. And if we put it into common terms of buying and selling, yes, that's a very common way of thinking about the money game. But it's also about that regeneration. How much is kept, how much leaves, and in what cycle does the money flow over time? That's Carol thinking about a one-on-one definition of economics.
What would you say, Alicia? How does it work? What is economics to you?
I think I agree with Carol. It's all inclusive. It's also a mindset. Therefore, I think is also what she's referring to. Economics is a mindset, not just within our community, but in our nation, right? What is economics to us mentally? What is economics to us within our own homes? I think that we as a nation have defined this upper class, middle class, lower class, and have created, therefore, a mindset for people to stay within some of those classes, in particular the lower class mindset. And so I think it's a mindset that we have to deal with when we think about economics, and therefore, what do we think about money? What do we think about the dollar bill? You know, how are we spending that mentally, you know, within our own and within our own households? And if we are in a lower economic bracket, are we mentally thinking about how we're going to get out of that lower economic bracket and meet the needs and the wants that we have and the opportunities that we have here within our country? And so that is how that's, in addition to what Carol said, that is the other thing that way I think about economics.
Chad, I want to bring in three key words that really come to mind. And is that idea of consumption, production, and transfer. Those are three key words that come to mind: consumption, production, and transfer of wealth. So when we think about consumption, that's what are we buying, right? Transfer, where are our dollars going? In this country, it's the American dollar. Where is it going from our pocket, and who's it coming from back into our pocket? All right. And then the key is production. Are we producing, or are we only consuming? And I think those are things that especially communities of African descent have to really think about in this country. Are we producing? Are we consuming? And how are those dollars being transferred and circulated?
I agree with you 100%. Ladies, what is the Black spending dollar? What does it look like? I've heard the numbers many times before. I know right now we're in a really precocious economic situation, but the Black spending dollar is incredible because I'm going to tell you why. We love our hair. We love good food. We love good liquor. I mean, you know what I'm saying? We love the best of the best, but how is our Black spending dollar looking right now? Alicia, I'll start off with you.
You know, it's interesting. We do. We love all of those things, and all of those things are always touted commonly amongst ourselves and others about where we actually spend our money, right? But, you know, doing a little bit of research, I actually learned that the bulk of our money is actually on healthcare, meaning our body maintenance, and also some of the food, you know, purchasing of food items in grocery stores, and then comes like the beauty products. And I was looking at this, you know, we can all check on Nielsen, which is, you know, one of our touted here in the United States, one of the touted, research platforms that we have to look at some of this data. And so we are at 1.3 trillion dollars is where the Black community is. That is what we are spending within our outside of our community in particular. And so those are the quote unquote some of the numbers that are being touted at this time. You know, there has to be a continued discussion on where we're spending that money, and we'll get further into that. But I'll open this up for Carol to respond to that as well.
Yeah, I want to say, and what Alicia's sharing, right, about the 1.3 million, yes, and when you think about only 14% roughly of the population. Yes. I mean, that says a lot, Chad. And of that, you think about, okay, some statistics that I pulled indicate 573 million approximately are on personal hygiene items, approximately 810 million on bottled water.
Yes.
151 million on luxury non-essential products. So that just gives you a bit of a scope of how those dollars are being spent. The key is, again, I state 14% roughly of this American population. So that shows you the astronomical power of the Black dollar and how much of the Black money is being spent, which is why various communities beeline it to the Black community in order to market their services and goods.
Right.
Well,
Right.
you know, somebody had a running joke on Facebook that said black people go to an Asian to get their nails done, but Asians don't come to us to get their nails done. What do you ever see? And no disrespect to the Asian community, any of that, but do we ever see an Asian person coming in our neighborhood, maybe to get barbecue, maybe to get some fried chicken? But they're not coming to our neighborhoods for grooming essentials. And I thought about that today. I said, that is so interesting that when you do find a black owned nail salon, it's like, oh, like it's an anomaly, but we used to control everything in our communities. Correct, ladies?
Exactly. Correct. I think one of the things, when you think about nail salons, and you think about certain food venues, barbecue and so forth, we have this stereotype and stigma, if you will, also within our society, within our U.S. society, that, oh, this group of people can do it best, and can do the nails better than an African American salon, or the black folks can do barbecue better than the Asians, which there's Asian barbecue, right? It's different. It's different.
Yes. And then here's the deal. They do hellified chicken wings too. I'm just saying. I've had some chicken wings from an Asian place that made me want to slap my mama. I'm sorry, I digress. Go ahead.
But I think so. One of the things that Tracy Wood says they sell fried chicken at their store too. But one of the things that what we don't necessarily want to focus on, why do we go over there? Maybe what we should be focusing on is, well, can we create our own nail shops? There are a lot of us during COVID-19 who have been, forced to do our own nails. I mean,
You did a good job. You did a good job.
Right? So why, my thing is, let's not so much focus on why we're going over there, or that we should not go over there. Just say, okay, you know what? Let's create our own. And like you referenced, Chat, we have always had our own. That is what we're talking about when we talk about some of these communities, including Tulsa, including Bronzeville, including Harlem, and now in particular, well, to a certain degree, like in Atlanta, we have always created our own and developing our own. And again, it's not to exclude the rest of society, but we'll have our own nail shops. And why don't you come over? Because we actually know how to do them just as well as you do. And we want to promote our business, because there are other things that the other communities are coming into, or actually coming in our communities and recreating and mimicking from what our businesses, what we have created and started. And that, of course, is on various different levels, including hair care. And Carol and I were talking about this the other day. But then, going back to some of the Asian communities, some of the Asian brothers, they go to hair salons in in different countries, right? In China, I've seen videos, they're getting their locks, natural locks done. Right. So there is a conversation there. And again, not to discredit or, talk against any one community, but it's about loving ourselves and creating what we have to create to share with others as well.
Mm-hmm. I think when it comes to the Asian nail salons and other places, there have always been African Americans who have been experts in doing nails, hair, etc. Right? I think that we have to be very clear about the saturation. Some of these other communities have saturated, and there have been economic streams that support the development of their businesses. One thing I spoke with Alicia about also is importing product. Mm-hmm. So let's say, for instance, the scenario could be, there can be African Americans and there are African American nail techs. All right. We want to ask questions. The licensing. Do we really know how licensing plays out with some of our brothers and sisters from other places? I don't know. I don't know if the licensing plays out in the same way with the level of stringent requirements. I don't know. Also, when it comes to the idea of promoting and bringing in the goods, many of those products are made in China. All right. So obviously, individuals who may have that connection with the East and the import line of import may have the ability to bring in things easier, potentially, possibly at lower cost than those who have to go through the middleman or the middlewoman in order to get supplies. So I think we have to think about that as it relates to our Black professionals and some of the particular steps that they may have to go through that others do not.
Okay, that makes great sense. Let me see. I had another question that was put up here. That did make a lot of good sense. You did mention the meccas of where Black money was circulated. A lot of the neighborhoods, you know, at one point here on the south side of Chicago, Chatham had its own Black dentist, doctors, pharmacy. You know, at one point we were self-sufficient of our own communities, and then all of a sudden the dynamics of it all changed. We used to have Black-owned gas stations, Black-owned banks, you know, things like that. Ladies, do you think with all of the looting and rioting that we've seen in major cities, especially Chicago, do you think that will come back where we will have Black ownership? A lot of people are very upset about a famous liquor store on the south side of Chicago not coming back because of the looting. And it really was not a Black-owned liquor store to begin with. But if you want a liquor store so bad, the way I look at it, put your damn money together and buy a liquor store. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Carol?
Well, the looting conversation, Chad and Alicia, is one that I think is multi-leveled, multi-layers, the notion of the looting. I don't have enough information to really delve deeply into who actually did loot. What were the cells that created the looting frenzy? Are they really that expansive? Now, we do know that there were many businesses hit, but we also know that it was at the tail of a horrific incident, the murder of Mr. Floyd. So on an average day in our community, there is not looting taking place in our community. So I although I do respect the fact that businesses were hit hard and that's a traumatic piece, I would hope that that's not the defining element of whether or not to establish business in a primarily Black community, because there's always theft in all communities. And a looting situation is one moment in time with an intensified situation that prompted it. So with what you're saying regarding the liquor store in the community, I think that the fact that we are 14% of the population, we have tremendous spending dollars, is a great reason why there needs to be more business in primarily African-American communities. And hopefully it will open up opportunities for more generation of wealth for Black businesses in the Black community.
Ladies, how do we pivot forward? We've been struggling for so long to hold our place, to stand up, to be recognized, because if we, you know, tomorrow is a day, July 7th, we're not supposed to spend any money unless it's with somebody Black. And so how do we take this from just a day to this now being the new way to live? I remember there was a Black couple a few years ago that were going to only spend their money at Black places. But the problem was trying to find a gas station, trying to find a grocery store that had what they want and needed. They had to eventually give up. Ladies, how do we as a race of people learn to move forward and start circulating these dollars in our community more? I'll start with you, Ms. Ross.
Yeah, I think, gosh, that's a loaded answer, but, you know, I'll start with, we have to research. There are now several different websites that you can go to find various different businesses within your city, within your state. You do a research to find out what those websites are, and they give you a list of the markets that are in the community, the clothing stores, the hotels, the resorts. And then also therefore we have to remember that we do have businesses. Once we research, we'll be very surprised to find out that we do have supermarkets, we do have resorts, we do have hotels, and we still have banks. I remember there was a movement a couple of years ago, some of our hip hop brothers were saying, invest in, like there's a bank down in Atlanta, one of the Black owned banks, and start investing in some of the Black owned banks. We had one here that went out of business. They kept, they existed for many, many years, but they went out of business several years ago. But some of these banks are still in existence around the country. And there are at least a couple, 2, 3 that are also, you can do investments in the stock market. Some of these, if you want to invest, literally invest in the stock market, for example, first, before you go to some of these big name, quote unquote, big name companies, popular companies, you can literally research online, do a search and say what companies own, what Black owned companies own stock. And then you can go and invest in those companies. So, you have people, like, for example, Robert Smith, one of the noted billionaires within our community, who is doing several things in our community regarding education, offering scholarships. So first, you have to know where the businesses are, who the people are. Mm-hmm. And then therefore do the investment, do the day-to-day investment. Like for example, like you said, tomorrow is, blackout day, if you will. I think also we've had a series of those. There was one that was supposed to have actually started from the 1st to the 7th, and then definitely on the 7th. So we've had several of those since these public incidents have occurred, because we know those have been happening, unfortunately, for many years now. But we are in a place where we can say, yes, let's invest in our own. There are some businesses that we don't have. I don't know of any Black owned gas stations, but that may not be publicly known. Maybe that is it is in some of the rural communities, some of the, some urban communities. But do your due diligence, research, so that you can invest in those businesses, in those organizations. And, as far as the stock market, if you want to do stock market, you can, again, research what businesses are on the stock market, and you can put, $20 a share or something like that. It doesn't have to be expensive. And so therefore, what I want to add is we shouldn't be afraid of money. And again, going back to the mindset, what is economics? It's for me, initially, it's a mindset. So we shouldn't be afraid to spend our money in our community, because yes, there are going to be some businesses, like some of the clothing and designers, they are expensive. Some of them are very expensive once you do your research. But if you have the income, you have the funds to do so, invest in them so that their numbers can go down. The more that we invest in some of these people that have, higher prices for their goods.
Yes. Dr. Carol, did you want to add something to that?
Right. I mean, Alicia is on point. What I was thinking yesterday, as she and I discussed, I came up with some thoughts about culturally conscious consumerism and critically conscious consumerism. Mm-hmm. That we have to operate that from that end. And what I mean by that is our discussion here today about Black economics is a discussion that should be had on a regular basis, like it's had in all communities. I'm sure our brothers and sisters from the Middle East discuss their businesses, our Asian brothers and sisters, Little Italy, our European American, our Latinx community. If you cross this globe and you look across the United States, you'll see all of those communities engaged in businesses, unapologetically. If we drive throughout the city of Chicago, we'll go into neighborhoods unapologetically where different ethnic groups are proud to have their businesses and proud to support their businesses. Should the African American community have anything less? The answer is no. And when we think also about our brothers and sisters throughout the diaspora, our African brothers and sisters our Afro-Caribbean brothers and sisters, those individuals too have a legacy of entrepreneurship in their country. So it's within us. It's just that in the African American experience, unfortunately, we have been utilized as perhaps a community that has been developed into those who are expected to consume and not produce. And slavery was a big part of that. We did not have the options. I think one of the first things we can do is begin to have a critical consumer mentality, critical consciousness. And what I mean by that is, number one, could I be employed in this institution? Regardless of who I am, could I be employed in this institution? Am I employed in this institution? Do I see people that look like me benefiting from this economic stream? Are they managers? Are they frontline workers? Where do I see people that look like me before I spend my dollar? Culturally conscious consumerism. Have I consciously spent money with someone that looks like me? Have I gone to a restaurant? Have I gone to an establishment and supported someone that looks like me? And I think it's very important because other groups, our brothers and sisters, our European American brothers and sisters, don't think in that vein because they know that the majority of businesses are going to be owned by people that look like them. And what left of our community to begin to have that critical consciousness? That alone, Chat Daddy, will change the economic stream. I say that with much passion because as the sister of a sister, my sister is a business owner. Previously, she had her business on Michigan Avenue. When Nordstrom came, her business was moved out, as were the other small businesses. But as I worked for her 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when I was a younger woman, as I worked for her, I recall Black people who would come in all the time who would have spent their money up in the water tower, but would come to my sister's business on Michigan Avenue, 500 roughly North Michigan Avenue, and would not drop a dime, but would be glad to say that they went to the water tower to buy. So I think that many of us still have a block about supporting people that look like us. And I think that's the first thing we need to examine. If in fact we have that, what is causing that? And how do we rise above it? And it's not a matter of not supporting other businesses. It's a matter of just voting with our feet, meaning we're going to support organizations that support us, either by employing us or by being owned by us. The dollars circulate back into our community. That's an expectation and a mandate. And what you said earlier about some of our brothers and sisters who are doing some of the nails, I have recognized those individuals and I do commend some of their work. But on the other hand, the question that you started off with, Kat, was do they buy from the Black community? And that is a question mark. Because even in watching some of the individuals eat, I don't see anything that appears to have been purchased from the Black community. I see them eating their food that they bring from their community. And you can call people for wanting their food. But on the other hand, it is a one-way pool for many of these organizations in our community. And I had shared with Alicia the other day, as a member of the Black community, living in the Black community, I find that we often go into establishments, be they gas stations owned by individuals from other communities, and things such as being able to use the debit card at the pump are not accessible. When we walk in, we're told that it's broken. It's broken on Monday. It's broken 3 Mondays later. It's still broken. I question that, Kat. I question that, Alicia. And as I shared with Alicia, does she find in her community, the North Shore, that on a regular basis, the inability to use the actual card at the pump? I believe some of that is by design in Black communities. And I don't have proof, team, but when I see something occur over and over again, the question is, where is the commitment to customer service for this community? To ask that question before we spend our money at various gas stations owned by various members of certain communities, which we're all aware.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That we see over and over again. And it's always an excuse. The pump is broken. I'm sorry, it's broken. It's broken. I don't believe that, Chad. I believe
Right.
that when using a piece of plastic in a Black community, there is an unwritten code that many Blacks have to come inside first.
Mm-hmm.
Get their card.
Right. Oh, I agree.
Anyone can question me on that. I know it's not all the gas stations. But when I begin to see a trend, I do wonder. And so critical conscious consumerism says, I don't know if I'm going to spend my money in that organization next time. Culturally conscious consumerism says, could I be hired there? Is anyone like me benefiting from this transaction? And I think that's where we need to go at this point.
Right.
Well, you know, I was telling both of you ladies that, you know, I did a move because of the economics of the square footage. Now, as far as in my community, are there things that I utilize that much? No, not really, because most of the things in the community are not things that I'm interested in. I'm not interested in ordering food through a bulletproof window. I'm not used to ordering things off a menu, asking for the number 2 with extra cheese. I'm not used to, you cannot let me pre-order, give you a debit card over the phone, and my food is ready when I get there. There's a place in my neighborhood, the best fried chicken ever, but you have to sit and wait 30 minutes for the chicken. He only takes cash. No pre-orders, and guess what? Right now he's out of business. And so I think that we must elevate our level as Black business owners as well to come and accommodate the times. Because here's the deal: if I call any of these food services, they would deliver food to me from anywhere in the world, but I'm also paying $30 for a $10 plate of food. So I'm not down for that as well either. So I don't know. I think our economics have got to get better as we, as business owners, do, you know, try to reach a better demographic. As I tell people, I only move because of what I got square foot for the money amount, not because of the neighborhood. I have to leave the neighborhood for anything. The only thing that I really spend money on in my neighborhood would be a pharmacy or where I go to be groomed up at. But other than that, there's nothing in my neighborhood that's appealing to me like that.
Right. And I agree, Chad, that we have to do, you know, those businesses have to realize if you want to generate more income for yourself, and therefore also for the community, you have to make sure that you're serving the community in the way in which you want to be served, you know, and you have to also, again, back to the mindset, you have to also think, how is it that I want to be received in this community, or just period as a business person, you know? So you have to be able to provide, you know, the best service that you possibly can, still hiring, you know, some of the, you know, African-American employees, you know, but giving them the training that they need. And as Carol mentioned, therefore also giving them the customer service training that they need. I don't understand, and I don't know where, you know, this lack has come from within some of our communities and some of our businesses. But we no longer need to feed into any stereotypes, because we are hardworking people. We are the ones that helped to build this country where it is modern day, where it is now, right? Mm-hmm. So we are hardworking people. We're not lazy people by design. You know, that is not who we are. That is not who they chose to bring over to this country, right? We were chosen, the stronger ones, to bring here to work. So we have, you know, an ethics of working hard. We're hardworking people. We know how to do that. That is why those other communities survived for so long and were able to generate business and to feed the people, to have laundromats and markets and so forth within the community when they migrated to all of these urban areas. We have to remember who we are. And that is why it's important to understand history. It's important to talk to, you know, grandmama and them, right? To understand.
Grandma and them, that's right. And them.
and them, you know,
And
to understand where we came from and understand that Grandpa actually did work very hard to put this on the table. You know, Grandpa was a sharecropper. Okay, Grandpa was a sharecropper. Sharecropper is one person away from his parents who were slaves, right? But he worked hard to build up and to help to support his family and put food on the table. You know, Grandma, she was the first, and actually I'm speaking specifically, you know, Grandma, she was the first person to start a school in her community. Why? Because she knew that, you know, those beautiful Black babies needed to be educated at a young age. And there wasn't a school that she saw that was meeting their needs. So she started one, okay, in South Carolina, my grandma, okay? You know,
wow.
We all have, you know, we all have some type of story like that, whether on a quote unquote smaller scale or larger scale. And we have to know our history. We have to know our, therefore, the strength, and know that, no, we're not lazy, and stop telling us that. And then therefore have the mindset to know to not receive that, and then produce the businesses and the service that you would want for yourselves. So everybody won't have to come in cursing and all this crazy stuff and wait 50 minutes for a piece of chicken.
Girl,
I think
for a piece of chicken. Yes, Dr. Carol.
I was thinking, thank you, Alicia, for sharing that, because there's so many levels, and we have to start from a level where we can begin to grow. And we have to recognize that we have been enculturated to believe in supremacy, white supremacy, which is the dialogue that is going on very, very clearly today in our society, and how that has impacted systems. Just as we speak of it, looking at the law enforcement system, is it any different when we think about the financial system? Is it any different when we think about the educational system? I mean, we can go on and on and on about the impact of this on systems and on system mentality. So we are always kind of bombarded, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, with the notion of that supremacy. And that supremacy still drives our choices. Yes. And for some reason, until we're able to really kind of deconstruct that, we're going to continually be held back by that. So even with issues of financial literacy, I know that there are organizations that provide financial literacy. I think that financial literacy in itself is intelligent content to teach, but for Black consumers, I think it needs to go deeper, all right, whereby we understand the history of socialization and how it had an impact. And if we look back in our history, we know that at a point in our history, no one would touch the Black community. No one would bury Black people. No one would do anything. That's why all of our schools were Black teachers. All of our morticians grew out of burying Black people. So there was a time when all we could do is be sufficient. As Alicia spoke, self-sufficient, as Alicia spoke about her grandmother, I mean, my grandfather, Justice Collins, owned Collins Landscaping. At that time, he was licensed and bonded. My father, Richard E. Collins, owned Collins Construction, licensed and bonded in the state of Indiana. But one thing about my grandfather's business at that time, landscaping in the early 1900s, was only reserved for Jewish hands and Black hands, because no other hand would get their hand dirty. That's what my grandfather used to tell me. And so now it's a multi-million-dollar business, landscaping. All right. So there's such great history in what we have done in our culture. All right. And what we are currently doing with Black businesses, but there has to be a re-education of Black people so that they have the same commitment to their businesses and empowering, regenerating income in their community, as do our Latinx brothers, as do our Asian brothers, white European American, etc., Little Italy, and we can go on and on and on. So the re-education is critically important, so that helps to dispel some of this notion of Black products being substandard, and also, unfortunately, Chad and Alicia, crabs in the barrel. I may not want you to succeed if I have a crabs in the barrel mentality towards a Black business person. And that does exist in some cases. It does exist.
The crab in the barrel thing, I think, has gotten us so bad that it's at every level. It's in the church, in the healthcare system. I just think that we have gotten, and matter of fact, that's kind of the prelude to our conversation tomorrow night, ladies. I want to do this real quick, and then we'll do our closing thoughts for tonight. Coming up on the Tuesday night edition of the Real Chat Daddy Show, I will continue my Hotter Than July series. Tomorrow night, I have a great discussion that you guys really do want to be a part of. Our very special guest co-host is a Hollywood, not a Hollywood, but a Broadway actor who will be joining us tomorrow night. He is Mr. Damone Seraphin. He is the founding artistic director of the New American Theater Company in New York. He'll be here tomorrow night to talk to us about remembering the life and times of actor Nick Cordero, who passed away from COVID over the weekend. He had a hard and long struggle, and Damone is actually a very good friend of Nick's, and so he'll be here tomorrow night to talk about that. But our important conversation to continue our dialogue is entitled Exposing the Monster, Combating the Internal Destruction of, and how do we raise the value of Black life? And so tomorrow night, we will be addressing the crabs in the barrel. We will be addressing how did we all become thugs, gangsters, pimp, hoes, all of that. That was not how we were looked at as Black people. We were actually at one point very revered, very, regal about everything that we did. So tomorrow night's conversation is going to be off the chain, much like this conversation tonight. And ladies, you're actually coming back for the next couple of Mondays to help us to have this conversation as well, too. Before we give your closing thoughts and all of that, Alicia, can you tell us about what we're talking about next Monday night?
Well, what we want to talk about is, continue this dialogue of what's happening within our community, and what it is that we need to do, for ourselves moving forward. You asked the question, how do we move forward? How do we project forward as far as, economics is concerned? We want to talk about some of the history of our community, because as I, mentioned earlier, and as Carol mentioned, we have to educate ourselves about who we are. And that is something that has not been done in the schools extensively. And, for example, you see the statues being taken down, and and people are saying, well, they were slave masters and so forth, and the Confederate flag. But what is the history of all of that? And then again, starting with what is the history of the stock market? Who are we, and where are we going? So this is a continued conversation.
All right. I love it. I do. I'm excited. So tomorrow night we'll be addressing those crabs in the barrel. Why do we think the way we do? Are we stuck in a rut? Our guest co-host tomorrow night is a young man from the west side of Chicago. And this man has just grown by leaps and bounds. And he'll be here tomorrow night to talk about we do not have to live so stagnant. And that's what I think a lot of us are just stagnant in growth. I don't care how many magna cum laude, how many PhDs, whatever. If you are stagnant in your ideas and your concepts, you'll never grow. And so tomorrow night, we'll add a lot to that as well, too. Ladies, we got a lot of good feedback. Everybody saying great show tonight. Yes, absolutely. So listen, by any chance you guys happen to miss the show live tonight, you can always go back to YouTube, put in The Real Chat Daddy Show. The show will be right there. I ask that you please subscribe to The Real Chat Daddy page. It's easy. It's simple. You'll be notified when the show airs. It's Monday through Thursday night from 7 to 8:30 p.m. I guarantee you every night during the month of July, I have some really great guests, great conversation. If you help share it and get the word out there, more and more people will join in on this free life-affirming information. Everybody who I'm presenting to you, there are people who are concerned about the world in which we live in and how we can be better with each other, how we can love each other, and how we can grow. Ladies, I'm going to come to you first, Dr. Carol, and let you give us that wisdom that you always give us. Give us your closing thoughts, anything else you want to add tonight. And what's for dinner, Dr. Carol? I'm getting ready to get in the car and come to your house. I ain't ate yet. But go ahead, Dr. Carol. We just love you.
Well, you know, one of the things I look forward to doing tomorrow is patronizing either Soul Vegetarian Eats or perhaps Can't Believe It's Not Meat. I know those are Black-owned businesses because I'm doing the vegetarian thing down, Chad and Alicia. So I look forward to treating myself to one of those nice dishes that they dish up. I just want to say that Alicia and I talked about this. We've got a plethora of folks out here who are doing it, and we commend them. I mean, I think of people that are very close to me. My sister, Design Delights Limited, Designer Dasu, my cousin, Justice Collins, Culture Connection 360. Right here in our city, we have folks historically and currently who are doing this good work. And we have enclaves of African Americans working together to produce economic change and production in communities across the city. Inglewood, other communities that have been impoverished, employing people from the community. So what I want to say is that we have always been a very resilient people. We have a bright history and an even brighter future. But there are some things that we must learn, and we can learn these things internally, Chad, Alicia. We can also learn by looking at other ethnic enclaves, looking at how individuals are not ashamed to celebrate who they are. That's something that we have to embrace. Unfortunately, we are one of the deculturalized groups where we were taught from day one to hate ourselves. That has been part of the American dialogue. But we have to dig deep inside and look around and say, my gosh, would this country be what it is today without the infusion of Black culture? Would it be, would the world see America the way they see us today without the infusion of Black culture? And we know that the answer is no. And as we look today and see others who are saying, I can't breathe, or let me breathe, or Black Lives Matter, or whatever they're saying, people of all hues. This is the time now that says, Black people, you are being heard. Let's take this opportunity to build bridges, learn from one another. And I guarantee as our Black communities become more empowered economically, that brings a greater level of respect. It's great for all communities. American society does best when all of its communities do best. So this is not an issue of us against them. This is an issue here, team, of we. We all are seeking the American dream, and we all can have it together, all races, all hues, and all persuasions. And that's what America's built on. That's what America's built on.
Oh, Miss Pearl Davis says she's proud to have you as a goddaughter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Davis. We love you. We love you. And we come from a history where everybody's mama or godmama. So we receive that, Miss Davis.
That's right.
Thank you.
That's right. Amen. Amen. We gotta stay with that. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly, Chad.
Whenever I speak to a woman that's older and I know this is a woman who has earned her stripes, I'm gonna call you mama. I'm gonna call you Miss So-and-so.
Amen, Chad.
You ladies are my friend. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
So I would tell a woman of some age and some stature, I'm always gonna be mother or yes ma'am or thank you ma'am. And people look at me weird nowadays for that.
No.
But that's just how I was raised and how I think you should do things.
That makes you the real chat daddy. True that. That makes you the real chat daddy. Alicia, what you thinking? You got any thoughts?
Yeah,
That's right,
actually. No, I'm enjoying this. Hi, I'm Pearl. That's my godmama.
Oh, that's your godmama. Oh, okay.
Right.
But she actually met Carol years ago.
Yes, Miss Pearl.
Yeah, at my place when I was down, not too far from where Carol lives.
Right.
And you know, and speaking of, you know, just respecting those who are ahead of us. I mean, I admire actually my Aunt Pearl because you know, she and my uncle have been ones that have been prominent in the community, in the Black community, for years, starting with some of the Black-owned businesses that they work for. Won't mention any names right now, but I have learned from them. And that's the thing that I was saying earlier. We have to remember who we are as a people, and learning from our immediate family members, you know, our godmoms, our godfathers, our mothers, our fathers, uncles, aunts. You know, we just had a big celebration for one of my cousins. His father passed away recently. He was prominent within the African American community here in Chicago. You know, they did it was a Juneteenth parade celebration for him just before you know, his passing. So we have to honor our elders, you know, and we have to acknowledge them and remember who we are and where we come from. And therefore, you know, and also I want to comment as far as the economics specifically. Carol knows I've been teeter-tottering with vegetarian, vegan for a while, you know. So when I was actually in Whole Foods the other day, not too far from where I am now, I have noticed that they are now bringing the Soul Vegetarian restaurants food back in the store. I remember when they did that years ago when I actually was a strict vegetarian. And they're now, not only do they have the food back in the store, they have his picture, the founder. They have his picture, this Black man's picture in this white store, right? And the description of who he is. And then a couple of rows down, there was this Black woman who was also showcased, who was doing soups, you know, making various different healthy soups within our Chicago community. So there are people who are acknowledging who we are, and it has come about because of the push. And unfortunately, as a result of the sacrifices of our brothers and sisters, and as a result of us making things public and showing these are the disparages that are happening in our society, and it has to stop now. And so, you know, when we talk about Black economics, yes, supporting our own communities, especially and in particularly, you know, yes, on days like tomorrow, July 7th, but continuously. But as Carol has referenced and Carol and I have talked about, acknowledging those stores that that maybe, you know, we want to frequent, that are employing our own, but importantly, even more, like this Whole Foods are highlighting not just the food, but they have the you know, the quick bio, the short bio of the person and the picture of the brother and sisters who are selling the food, and they're selling them at their stores. So we have to be cognizant of that, because yes, we are an American society, and that includes all of us, Black, white, you know, all races, all ethnicities. That is who we are. That is how we were built, right? We are all immigrants, our ancestors, you know, just to put that little plugger in. You know, we are all from various different backgrounds. And when we recognize that others are supporting us, we definitely should support them. You know, we definitely should support them, because we're all trying to live the American dream, but we have to do it together. You know, making America great again means actually starting something new. That is what we need to do. And that is where we're heading. With all the things that have happened, and as a result of, again, of the unfortunate incidents, there are great things happening, and we have to continue the dialogue. You know, there are policy changes that are happening within our communities, the cities, the states, and that is great. And it includes overall, you know, the economics. And again, we'll talk about some of these other things as we continue on over the next couple of Mondays. I am grateful to be here. Thank you. Good to see both you, Chat Daddy, and Carol. And thank you all for joining. This was great. I'm glad to be back.
Yes, this was dynamic, ladies. I love you both. You are incredible. We're getting so much wonderful feedback from the audience. People are saying, Just really great show. Old school respect. Thank you, Sister Guest. We love it. Thank you, Art Chat Daddy Sims. Great show tonight. Bye, Black. We want to remind everyone tomorrow, July 7th, we are not spending any money unless it's with people who look like us, Black-owned businesses. I'm actually going to get a manicure and pedicure tomorrow from a Black-owned nail tech. I'll also be having lunch at a Black business tomorrow. So I'm just encouraging you guys to do the right thing. Go out tomorrow and only spend money with somebody that looks like us, not against anybody else. But tomorrow we want to show how strong our economic dollar is and that we do have that power to make a difference. Ladies, I love you both. I'm excited about next Monday night. I cannot wait to hear what we're going to talk about next week. I am. You know, I just love you two. I do. I feel bad we're not in Virginia. I do, but that's all right.
A divine connection.
That's right. It worked out for the greater good. It really did. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of both of my amazing guests tonight, these two beautiful ladies who are not only my sister friends, but these women are very bright. I just love and adore them. Thank you guys so very much for tuning in tonight. We want to remind you all, please wear your mask. Please use sanitizer, keep your hands clean, social distance, continue to do the right things as much as possible. We want to keep a curve on all of these viruses, especially COVID-19. We want to keep our curve down, keep it low, so that we're able to do the best things ever. Oh, that's so funny. I should have more shows with these women. They'll be back every Monday.
Thank you.
Right. CD said I need to have more shows with you ladies. They'll be back next Monday. Look, before you know it, we're gonna be on the Oprah Network. I just need to be there. That's all. I don't care. These my girls. I love these ladies. I do. CD is happy.
Thank you, CD.
We do. On behalf of my guest host tonight, thank you guys so very much for tuning in. Be safe. Don't forget therealchatdaddy.com is my website, therealchatdaddy.com. For encore performances of tonight's show as well as other shows, go to YouTube, The Real Chat Daddy Show, Facebook, The Real Chat Daddy Show. I'm ready to eat. Tomorrow, spending black dollars. Another one said, love the show. Thank you so much. We do. All right. We're over and out. Good night, ladies.
Good
I
night.
love you.
Good night, Chad.
Next week. All right. See you later. Good night. Yay.